Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to ioRadio with your host, Adam Smith. Today on the show is part 2 of our ongoing series where we engage in debates and discussions with pro-crypto people. This is part 2 of our conversation with veterinarian Dr. Rob in New Zealand, where he talks about specific use cases for blockchain and Bitcoin. So in the first part, if you saw it, he talked about a common claim, which is that Bitcoin allows people to send value across borders. He argued it was for people without IDs. I argued that people that meet that demographic have many other issues that might not make them even compatible with wanting to use crypto. Again, a very vague argument with no specifics, so we couldn't drill down and see whether or not his claims held water. In part 2, we pivot and he talks about Bitcoin mining as a way to address issues with the energy grid. So is this going to be a better argument? Is it going to be more substantive? Is it going to be specific? Let's find out. So what else you got?
What else I got? Well, I came on to talk about energy and the environment and Bitcoin mining.
Okay.
So if we want to keep going,
let's try
which
it.
I'm happy to do. It's up to you.
And I mean,
cool.
We don't have to stay on that much longer if you want, but I'm enjoying this, and I hope you don't mind if I'm not trying to give you a hard time or anything.
No. I mean, I wasn't expecting to come on and be greeted with open arms and having somebody say every idea I have is a great one. It's so it's back and forth is why I came on. It's one of the reasons that I spend so much. I try to spend equal time in pro Bitcoin, anti Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
Communities.
Okay, so let's
avoid the echo chambers that exist.
So you feel like Bitcoin can help with whatever energy problems there are? Let's hear your argument there.
Bitcoin miners have unique attributes which allow them to profitably use electricity in situations where others cannot.
All right, hold on.
Yep.
That statement I think is not universally true. I think their ability to profit is dependent on two factors that are variable. One is the price of Bitcoin, and the other is the price of electricity. So if neither one of those variables are at certain thresholds, then they won't profit. And we're seeing that in many instances.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
But in the instances where that isn't, where they can profit and they do have electricity at the cost that they need, they can locate themselves in positions that other industries cannot, because they do have unique characteristics that no other kind of scalable industry has.
I don't know about that
because they are.
I don't know about that.
Well, yep. So we can kind of run
through.
It's an interesting
argument.
So
I haven't heard
it. They're interruptible. So Bitcoin miners are interruptible, right? So there's not much else that can just be turned off at the flick of a switch as far as industry goes. Most things, if you have an aluminum smelter, say, you can't just flip the switch if you've got a whole bunch of melted aluminum in there, because it'll harden and you've got to rebuild the entire place, right?
Yep.
So there are a lot of limitations associated with that. Traditional data centers, well, you can't just flip them off because then the equipment at the hospital is not going to work, right? So Bitcoin miners they can turn off 100%. One Bitcoin location can just flip the switch, turn off, and the network works just fine.
Okay.
There's
Agreed.
there's very little downstream or upstream effects associated.
Okay,
with
let me provide some alternatives to the Bitcoin mining. Okay, so First off, we're gonna ignore the elephant in the room, which is whether or not anything is useful is actually produced by the expansion of the energy. We're just going to talk. We're not going to get to that argument just yet. We're just talking about alternatives to. Okay, the elephant in the room there is if there really is a tremendous amount of extra energy, is that a flaw in the design of the electrical grid? Because that's what I would say. I would say if you've got energy that's being wasted, Bitcoin doesn't solve that. The real solution is to reduce that energy generation. Like you said, you could wind down some turbines. You could do something, but we'll skip that right now. Let's just talk about, the idea is you've got this energy that's going to waste, and you can drop a Bitcoin mine in there and bam, it's relatively portable and it's instantaneous. You can flip it on and use that energy. You can flip it off and not, right? So,
yep. Or scale it. You can if you can use, you need to use 10% less, you just drop it by 10%. You need
okay.
50% less, drop it by 50%.
All right. So let me
It's
give you some.
not even just all on, all
Let me
off.
give you some alternatives to that I think would be better than Bitcoin, right?
Sure.
So when you're Bitcoin mining, the only thing of value that is created in that process is more Bitcoin for the miner. And that's also predicated on the miner actually solving the block puzzle. If this miner is not part of a consortium that has enough hash power to consistently win the block puzzle, all that energy wastage produces absolutely nothing of use or value. It is just completely wasted. Now, if you do
produces profit for the electrical producer.
I guess, yeah, that's true. But again, if the goal is to make corporations more value for their shareholders, that's not necessarily good for the people or humanity. But let's say, what else could you do in that situation other than do a Bitcoin mine? Well, you could put a water desalination operation in there. Those are
you
very.
could if you're on the coast.
Well, there's a lot of salt water out there. There's a lot less than there is fresh water. Or you could do a water purification center. Or you could just have a battery recharging system where that energy just recharges batteries. All that could be scaled up or down or turned off. But the difference between that and Bitcoin is you're actually producing something incredibly useful for everybody, that could be used by everyone. And it's also a profit source for the electric company too.
Yes. Yep. So let's kind of look at a couple of examples. So the major, I said that it has some unique attributes, and I covered one that I said, which was interruptibility.
Uh-huh.
You covered another one, which is that you can just kind of plop them down anywhere. They're geographically agnostic, basically.
Well, that's not true. They require
an energy source and internet.
Well, they also generate a lot of heat, so you wouldn't want to stick them in the tropics or next to a volcano, But
well, you could because you could just put a cooling system.
But
you'd
waste even more energy.
Still can be made remotely.
Cooling it, yeah. I would say geography. It's not. It still has to be. You can't put it around other. You can't put it too close to urban neighborhoods. We've already seen there's noise problems and these big operations.
Well, there's ways to mitigate that with immersion cooling and stuff like that.
But that's another problem where you've got water usage that becomes another resource drain too.
Well, immersion cooling uses that kind of oil stuff,
mm-hmm.
So it doesn't.
Well, but these operations still use a lot of water in their cooling systems, though.
Some of them do, yeah. Some of them do for sure. Yeah. So, and then we're talking large scale. So the ones that you're looking at, we're talking the mega mines. Those are not geographically agnostic. The mega mines, right? But Bitcoin in general, should be. So we've got two. We've got interruptibility. We've got geographically agnostic. Yes, there's going to be a few limitations here and there, but as compared to any other industry, Bitcoin miners can be plopped down in a much wider range of locations than any other industry, unless you can think of an industry that can't.
No, but obviously the main reason to run these Bitcoin mines is to try to generate some Bitcoin, which means to try to make some money. So since it doesn't produce anything else of use for the people, it just consumes a resource that some people would argue would otherwise go to waste. It doesn't help out the local communities. It's not really a job creator. It's not like these things are employing tons of people. So what's the sell? Why is it a good thing to stick in some place where there's some extra energy?
Methane mitigation. All right. So this is the big one that I think will have a huge impact on our kind of climate journey. Uh-huh. We're now realizing that methane is our biggest concern in the short term. COP28, the most recent global climate change convention, that's basically what it was all about was methane. So we're learning two things. One, we're learning just how bad methane is for the environment, how it's a much faster affecting greenhouse gas than like carbon dioxide is. And And we're also learning that we're releasing way more of it than we thought we were. We're getting new monitoring techniques, satellite imagery, and that kind of stuff to show that we're actually releasing.
So how does Bitcoin address this problem?
So the methane, our biggest methane is coming from oil and gas, agriculture, and landfills. So it can't really do, it can do a little bit. Well, basically it does. It affects all three of those. And it's currently, there's methane being mitigated in each one of those areas by Bitcoin miners right now.
How are Bitcoin miners mitigating methane? Give me a specific example.
Well, you can look at nodal power. So they've got a few different sites set up where they're capturing methane at landfills, and you set up a generator. So landfills, basically they emit methane, right? They as organic compounds decompose in an anaerobic manner, they release methane into the air. Quite a lot of it, right? Around 20% of all of our methane. Well, we thought it was 20%. It's probably closer to 40% now that we're seeing that it's actually worse. But it comes from landfills. So in order to fix that, you've got to put a cap on top of them, capture that methane, and then either just kind of burn it. So you can just either vent it straight out, so the methane goes up these stacks and just gets released into the air. You can light it with a match, and that's when you see these flares. So sometimes you'll see them on the top of landfills. It's just big giant candles, basically.
Mm-hmm, right.
Or you can set up a generator to use that methane. And so the thing is that when you flare, you get maybe up to about 92% effectiveness at burning the methane.
But you're also releasing CO2, right?
Well, you're converting that methane into CO2.
Right.
That's
so you're basically
that's what
yeah.
That's what methane does in the environment, right? So if that methane just went up into the air, it would be 84 times as effective as a greenhouse gas in the first 20 years. And then it slowly degrades and turns into carbon dioxide on its own. And then it acts like carbon dioxide does for the remaining time. But if you burn it, then you don't get that initial 20 years. You just skip straight to the carbon dioxide part.
Okay, so it's just slightly better then. Yeah.
No, much better. I mean, because it's 84 times, not 84% more. This is 84 times as much warming as carbon dioxide. That's huge.
But if you don't release it into the atmosphere in any form, that's going to be even better.
Correct. Yeah, but you can't do that with landfills. They release methane. If you tried to cap them, I've seen people, like Jackie Swicky say, "Oh, but you're still burning the methane," and you say, "Well, yeah, but and if you try to cap it, which is what I've seen her say, you're just creating bombs. I mean, they're going to explode because you have to release that air that methane."
Right, but so let's take your permaculture thing. Can't there be some natural way that we can investigate that where the methane can be broken down naturally? Why do we have to burn it, connect it to generators?
There is some stuff associated with that where you can seed it with some bacteria that will basically eat the methane. That is some research that's going in, and there are places that are putting in effect today. It doesn't work 100%. We can't as of yet. I mean, maybe in the future we'll have some technology, but that's not the case. Right now, what we're doing is we're capturing the methane, we're burning it. That's what the Biden administration wants to do. That's what the EPA does. They pay people to do this, to cap it and then burn it. They get paid to do it because it's an environmental good.
Well, I can see that being an improvement, but I don't know where Bitcoin comes in as an actual solution. You could burn it. You could convert it into some electricity, but again, that electricity could be used for other stuff too than just Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, and so that's where I was. So 8 years ago, when I was doing my kind of deep dive into Bitcoin and energy, that's where I was. Just use it for something else, I would say, right? Just use that electricity for something else. Mm-hmm. And so then I started trying to steelman that argument, right? And I started saying, okay, like what? And who's going to pay for it?
I can give you an example. I'll give you an example.
Okay, so let's say
that uses the exact same resources.
Let's say we've got a landfill in rural North Dakota. What could go on there?
Instead of running a Bitcoin mine, you take those exact same GPUs and you run folding at home. And then you're actually producing something that is valuable for humanity with that energy. You're crunching all kinds of genetic calculations and stuff like that. Even running SETI, where you're using networks of computers to process radio data. Even that has got some positive potential for mankind. I think that is a better use of energy. That sounds awesome. Better use of energy than Bitcoin.
So what? Are people doing that?
I don't know if they are. It may not be
Why not?
I don't know. I think
Well, if they were to do that, if they were to set up a methane capture system at a landfill, invest in a generator, costs around $2 to $3 million to do so. How much money would you make running folding? What was it called that you said? Folding.
Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay. Well, I would expect you to be a doctor to be. So folding at home is, well, first there was SETI. And these are two systems where people were able to download a piece of software and put it on their computer and use their idle CPU time to do a process for the global good. The original version was SETI at Home, Search for Extraterrestrials. So the Association of Radio Astronomy or whatever has this massive database of radio signals they've recorded, and they want to analyze all these things for patterns, right? They don't have enough computing power, so they turned it into a distributed network called SETI, where you could dedicate idle time of your computer, and it would get a block of data from the SETI archives, and it would analyze it, and if it found anything interesting, it would signal somebody. And so it was using idle energy and CPU processes to be able to do this. And then there's another version of it called folding at home, which I guess, and I'm not an expert on this, but it has something to do with protein folding and genetic calculations. And so they would basically turn everybody's idle CPU time into a giant distributed supercomputer that could analyze these proteins and stuff like that would be very useful in the field of medicine and medical research and genetics and stuff like that. And I think it's still going on. Like, you could Google folding at home. I don't know if it's still happening right now, but I think some of that stuff is out there. But those are examples of you're taking idle resources that are otherwise not being used, and you're allocating them towards something that is for the social good.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome. But I don't see anybody spending millions of dollars to capture methane at a landfill to run that program. Do you?
I don't know. I mean, obviously money does play a big role in it. That's why, unfortunately, why we need governments and we need central authorities, because sometimes what's in the public good that costs money is not always profitable. And so that's kind of, the nature of things.
Yeah, so that's where I think that Bitcoin mining comes into play. So that's kind of my thought. I've been, for decades, I've been yelling about climate change and all that kind of stuff. I've been yelling about governments, for governments to do stuff. And I don't see that happening fast enough. And I think that if you look at kind of the COP conventions, you'll see that there's very, very little progress being made. And if you talk to the scientists, they will say the same thing. Like, we are not doing enough. So that's where I see Bitcoin mining coming into play. That I think that it helps because it provides a financial incentive to do that. Sure, maybe this
a financial incentive to do what?
To actually go and to go and monetize this electricity at these sites. So we have, like I said, I don't know of any people who are doing kind of data processing for good at any of these sites, but I know of multiple people that are capturing methane currently at landfills to run Bitcoin.
Let's talk about that. So the motivation here is self-motivation, right? The Bitcoin miners want to make money. That's why they're getting involved in this process anyway. Okay.
Absolutely.
So two scenarios. You got a Bitcoin miner who could capture methane at a landfill, or you got a Bitcoin miner that could go into some state where power is cheap but it's dirty. If their main motivation is their own self-interest, they're going to go where there's dirty power. They're not going to spend that much more money and jump through a bunch of regulatory hoops to deal with a landfill and capturing methane. I don't see that fitting into their motivations. Now, just because you
Well,
see
it's
one or
happening,
two,
though.
it's happening. It's happening on a demonstration scale, not on a practical
Yeah,
production
absolutely.
level. And this is one of the
Well,
problems that I have with crypto, right? Is that somebody will set up a prototype of something, and then the crypto industry will run with it and say, this is the future, and it never goes anywhere. It never goes anywhere. You know, the same thing with all the gas flaring arguments and all of that. Sure, there's one or two people that are doing it, but is it practical on a wide scale? I am highly skeptical of that.
There's a lot more than one or two people doing it. But so Marathon. So you talk about having a prototype, and so Marathon Digital. So you know them. They're one of the giant miners.
Yep.
They just finished. I think they've got two pilots going on. One of them at a small landfill in the U.S. and one of them at a big landfill in, I think, is it India, maybe Middle East? Can't remember now. But because we in the U.S. Around 50% of our landfills are already capturing methane, and a lot of them are flaring it rather than actually using that electricity, or that energy. But they are actually capturing it, and so that's pretty good because there is legislation in place to say you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that it's only half of them is because the legislation only covers large landfills close to urban centers, because they know that those are the people who, one, have the available population and funding to pull from to actually build out this system, and two, they have a way of actually either capturing that gas itself and linking it in with the gas pipelines, or turning that gas directly into electricity and linking that in with the grid. The problem is that the EPA estimates that only about 30% of landfills actually have the ability to export either that gas or that electricity. So you've got 70% of them that could do this methane capture, but they can't actually send that electricity off-site, and that's usually because they're in rural areas. Right. So you have in the U.S. our problem is the small miners. Overseas, or small landfills overseas, a lot of places haven't actually started on the big landfills yet. So those are the big issues, and so Marathon's looking at those landfills over there. So they just finished up their pilot program, or just had a report of their pilot program of the one in the U.S. And they found that they have higher uptime on the landfills. And their cost basis is lower.
I got you.
So Marathon has said that their numbers prior to going into this pilot kind of show that they are likely looking at moving away from the large model and moving to a distributed model on landfills, because it is financially incentive for them to do so, because it's non-competitive. They don't have to worry about somebody else coming in and complaining that they're taking their electricity, and they don't have to worry about environmental activists being upset because they're adding to grid strain and all that kind of stuff, and carbon dioxide, because they're actually mitigating methane. So not only is it financially good for them, but it's good for their image and good for the environment.
Okay,
so it has the incentives there.
So there's a lot there to unpack, but let me just say I'm not an expert in what these companies are up to and their press releases and how close they are to reality and practicality. Obviously, your source for probably a lot of this is going to be from Marathon itself, and they're not going to admit that that it's just nothing but a PR boondoggle, or they want to rub, give shareholders a belly rub. I don't know what the data is on that, but it's all prototypical. So it's all just planning stuff, and I'm not convinced, even if it's an option, I would still argue, right? Methane capture is obviously important, but what we do with that methane, I'm not convinced that burning it off to generate electricity for Bitcoin is the best use of that resource. And I recognize that you believe that the profit motive of expending that energy could make it somewhat attractive to certain people. I'm skeptical how attractive that would be, because I still argue, even though you might have a few companies that are experimenting with, say, these green ways of generating energy, I bet Marathon, the vast majority of their operations are probably not super green. They're probably wherever there's cheap power and less likely to be super clean power. But more importantly,
Marathon are the ones who were at the heart, and they got a lot of crap for opening up in Montana at that coal plant.
Yeah.
But because of all the crap they got, they moved entirely to wind. So But sorry, I interrupted you.
No. But yeah, see, I don't know enough about that. Jackie Sawicki would be the one that would know everything about all of that.
I don't think she knows much about the landfills, because whenever anybody brings that up, she says that we need to just stop letting the methane out, which is impossible to do. So,
well, I'll tell you what. I'll let her listen to this and see, and maybe she might have something to say about that. Maybe she doesn't know. I'm not sure. But the overarching thing I want to say about this is that we both recognize this is a problem, and that we both recognize that something needs to be done about it. I'm not convinced that Bitcoin addresses the problem anywhere near in the most efficient way. I recognize that it is kind of cool that if there's money to be made on this methane, that we might not need the government to subsidize the capture efforts if we can find another industry that's willing to do it because it's in their own interest. I'm not convinced that the crypto mining industry is big enough or ethical enough or concerned enough to really want to tackle what is really a very large worldwide issue that's very complicated. Every jurisdiction, there's going to be different rules and regulations. And if there's one thing crypto people don't like, it's rules and regulations. Now, they'll do it to jump through hoops to be able to do a prototype so they can send out a press release saying we're capturing methane. But can that be rolled out on a large scale so it becomes a net positive for mankind? It remains to be seen.
Well,
and wait, let me say one other thing. Again, this all predicates on the nirvana fallacy, which is that the price of Bitcoin stays high enough to warrant it. And that is a whole nother argument, whether or not the price of Bitcoin can sustain itself when there's so much concern about its price being a function of market manipulation and not organic demand. This is the big thing that I worry about anybody. If I was in the crypto industry and I had put a lot of money into a crypto project, my biggest fear is that the price would drop. And with the halvings, the block rewards are getting smaller and smaller. So the only way to compensate for that is for the price of Bitcoin to go up or transactions to go up. Either one is unpalatable for the person that's going to be using Bitcoin as a network. So the system by design contradicts itself in its utility. And this is a concern that I don't see an easy way out of. You know, Ethereum tried to address it by moving to proof of work, but it's just a lateral move. It didn't necessarily solve the problem.
No, I mean, Bitcoin decided long ago the Bitcoin community decided long ago that the base layer would not scale. Right? We decided that scaling would happen on second, third, fourth layers, whatever. How that's going to play out, we'll see. But that's the decision that was made. And so the idea that the transaction fees are going to increase so it's not usable. Yeah, that's kind of the idea.
Transaction fees. Everything, all the fees have to increase, and the price of Bitcoin has to go up because every X number of years the block rewards drop. So anybody that creates any kind of a Bitcoin mining project that hopes to make money in perpetuity in the future is depending on both of those things going up. Transaction fees going up.
Kind of.
No, it has to. They can't make money. Their revenue stream will stop. The exception being companies like Riot in Texas, where they've got this scheme where they make money selling power back to the Texas grid at a higher rate. They make more money turning their machines off than turning them on, which is a really sad political situation for the people of Texas.
Oh, I think it's awesome. It's awesome.
It's not awesome for they have to pay twice as much for the electricity that they already paid for once. It just seems crazy.
Well, that's demand response. It's needed for variable renewable grid. You have to have demand response. The International Renewable Energy Association says we need 10 times as much demand response as we currently have in order to meet our 2030 targets. That's not like 2050 targets, anything like that. That's 2030 targets. We need 10 times as much demand.
Well, there are ways to handle demand response.
To have functioning.
The better way to handle
that is not including batteries.
Yeah, but the better way to handle
batteries are another added thing.
Wait, but the better way to handle demand response is to not do what Texas has done. Texas has created its own problems by isolating its power grid from everybody else. What you do is you peer with various other regional power grids so that when they have excess energy, you can use it and vice versa. Texas just didn't want to share with anybody. And so they've created their own problems. So now like crypto, they've created their own ecosystem that's inefficient than the larger ecosystem that's around them. And so rather than admit that they've made a mistake, they're rushing to come up with all kinds of crazy schemes to make their crippled system function at least half as good as all the regular systems that have been working around it. It's like Texas's power system is exactly like Bitcoin. It's like a poor copy of an existing infrastructure that we've been using already that works half as well. And now everybody thinks that it's spawning this whole new growth industry when it's people running around in circles trying to fix problems that have already been solved. There's the comedy Gödel that we have, that all of these problems have been solved, a lot of them with respect to the energy grid and demand response and stuff like that. But when you insist on doing it yourself, you're gonna and not paying attention to what other people have already transcended beyond, you're gonna run into those same problems. That's what we're seeing. So yeah, Bitcoin is great in that scenario. It's another half-baked solution to a problem that many areas don't even have.
Yeah, I mean, it fits a lot of gaps, right? It fits a lot of little holes, whether those are man-made, politically made issues. There's a lot of different areas. Like look at Paraguay. So Paraguay just had, they've got a real crap grid, right? Paraguay. They don't have industry to pay for maintenance or upgrading of their grid, and they don't have the grid to entice industry to come, right? It's a chicken and egg kind of thing. So they have a shared hydro facility that they built with Brazil, kind of on their border. And they have an agreement when it was built that they would each kind of share the power. And if one side wasn't using all their power, they would then export that power to the other side. Mm-hmm. So in this case, it's Brazil and Paraguay. So most people can assume that Brazil is the one who are using the electricity. And Paraguay wasn't using the electricity from this big hydro plant. So they were then selling it to Brazil. Mm-hmm. Now, when they sell it to Brazil, they sell it at 20 to 25% of what they would sell it on the market. So they had these Bitcoin miners that were coming in and then paying for this electricity from this site. And then the politicians got all upset early this year, I think, and said, we're going to put a ban on all Bitcoin mining. Right. So they kind of put that through. And then within, I think it was a week or two, they came back and said, hey, some people are going to touch with us and maybe this isn't the best thing to do. They opened up the commentary. Now they've decided, hey, we are actually just going to sell this to the Bitcoin miners because the Bitcoin miners will pay 4 times as much as what we can sell it to Brazil for. And so last year, I think they said they made $100 million off the Bitcoin miners. This next year, they expect to make $150 to $200 million off of the Bitcoin miners. And then they can use that money to invest in their grid, as well as lower fees for electricity for their constituency. Right. So there's a lot of different things that can be done. You've got Hive Digital. They've got sites in Sweden, Ireland, Iceland.
I see that. Okay, that's an interesting, a good argument there. And my main argument still stands, which is I think this is all temporary because it's all predicated on the price of Bitcoin being at a certain level. And if that isn't sustained, all bets are off. There's not going to be enough incentive to mine. So any deal anybody works anywhere is very precarious. We've certainly seen plenty of mining operations sign contracts and then violate those contracts and not be able to honor them and go out of business. Because tomorrow the price of Bitcoin could drop by 50%. It's entirely possible.
It could.
If Tether goes belly up or some municipality issues an arrest warrant for Paulo and all those people, and they control 100 plus billion of liquidity that's supposed to be in the crypto market, and that thing goes poof, it's going to cause just this huge run on the crypto bank and cause tremendous loss right there. And there's a lot of us that believe that crypto printing, Tether printing is what's kept the price of crypto going up and stable. And without that, the price, who knows what the real price is. So there's that, which is the whole idea that any of these mining operations could do something positive is predicated on this very fragile market, the price and how it's controlled by just a small number of unregulated, shady casinos. That's a concern.
Yeah, and
But I also
price volatility is important because it in the long run moves Bitcoin miners towards the cheapest source of electricity. Well, there's two things that I think will happen. One, these mega miners are going to go. They're not going to last long term. I think we probably both agree on that.
I think they are going to last
long term is if they are participating in demand response and being paid.
I think what's going to happen. Here's what I think is going to happen: that all mining is eventually going to become consolidated. It's getting closer and closer to that. The original premise behind Bitcoin was that anybody could run a mine and it would all be decentralized. But what we found is that because of the way the block reward is a winner take all, one entity, one computer guesses the right number and they get the block reward. So if you're not on that, if you don't have a team of people that share the block reward, everybody else gets left out. They've wasted all that energy and have nothing to show for it. So it's just inevitable because of Bitcoin's design that eventually there will be one mining consortium and nobody will be able to compete with them. It won't even be worthwhile turning your computers on. They'll have so much hash power that will outnumber you. And then, of course, there will be no competition. There'll be one mining rig, and then that mining rig can shut down half of their machines, make just as much money using half the electricity. So then you think, well, then that'll leave room for somebody else to come in and compete with them. But then they'll flip a switch, fire up the other half of their rigs, put them back out of business. It's going to be an interesting mafia situation with mining where eventually there's going to be one consortium that controls everything. And at that point, they won't even need to expand all over the world for electricity. It could be, just the threat of having more hash power to put anybody else out of business will keep anybody else from firing up their systems. That's what I predict will happen. We'll see. And that's assuming Bitcoin lasts. I'm still not convinced what's going to happen first, whether mining is going to become unprofitable or the whole market is just going to implode. I don't think Bitcoin will necessarily go to zero, just like, Beanie Babies still have some marginal value. But I think at some point it's going to have to settle, and it's going to settle in a significantly less than what it is today. And that's going to all cascade down into any other project that's dependent on the mining and the block rewards. All your arguments are predicated on Bitcoin's price stability, which I think is something nobody can count on. Or don't you agree?
Well, I don't think it's predicated on Bitcoin's price stability, but I think it is predicated on Bitcoin having significant value. If it drops to $1,000, then sure, none of this is going to work, right?
Right.
But I don't think volatility. I think volatility is good because I think that is what weeds out the miners that aren't producing something in excess. So my theory is that we will, I think, fairly quickly move to a situation where Bitcoin miners will only be profitable if they are earning some form of income for an alternative service. So right. I like to call them double dipping. So not only are they making a bit of money with their Bitcoin that they are mining, but they're making some money for demand response services, for methane mitigation services, for heat production
right.
services.
So basically, Bitcoin was just an excuse, but the real, and that I agree with you. I think that's what's going to happen because I think you can't depend upon Bitcoin as a revenue source. I don't think that's a reliable, smart thing to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, from a business standpoint, you would want something that's a little bit more consistent.
But are you telling me?
And so that's where you've got these businesses like at Hive Digital, who I was saying, they've got 3 different sites, 3 different countries. Mm-hmm. I think they're about kind of between 1.2 and 1.5 megawatt sites where they're using renewable energy to power Bitcoin miners. And then, so the one in Canada, the Bitcoin miners heat a 200,000 square foot warehouse. They heat a 90,000 square foot greenhouse.
Right.
And so these are people who were using gas, right? And they didn't want to switch to electric heat because of the fact that it's going to cost a little bit more money. So they were not financially incentivized to do so. But with the Bitcoin miners producing heat, they get the heat, plus they get a little bit of extra Bitcoin to, even if they're not completely offsetting that cost of electricity with Bitcoin, they only have to offset maybe 20% of the cost of the electricity with Bitcoin in order to make it profitable to switch from gas.
Yeah, but I think Bitcoin mining as a source of heat is incredibly inefficient. I'm sure some people are doing it.
At scale like that.
I saw a video of a guy who had a swimming pool and he was using his Bitcoin mining rig to heat the swimming pool. And of course, somebody comes over and he's like, don't check the swimming pool. It's not warm enough. It's like there's no way that some little mining rig is going to heat a swimming pool. It's just not an efficient way of doing it. So
right, but you can heat. I mean, people are heating factories and greenhouses, and they're
yeah, they
heating
can.
water and car washes.
It's like cutting your grass
green.
with a pair of scissors. You can cut your grass. There's a guy out there that's got a lot of pairs of scissors that he wants to sell. So he's going to show you all the different ways that you can do things with scissors that nobody ever thought of. I understand that. That's
if
cool.
you can, but if you can, you're equating saving money on heat with using scissors to cut your grass.
I'm equating using a very inefficient way to accomplish something when there's many more efficient ways of doing the same thing.
Bitcoin miners are 95% efficient at creating heat. Right? Electricity turns into heat. That's what happens. Now, if you want to heat a warehouse,
creates a lot of e-waste. There's a lot of extra stuff involved, a lot of high costs. It's a lot cheaper to buy a heater than it is to buy a Bitcoin mining rig. You're cherry picking certain parts of that process.
Your setup cost is going to be less for sure, but your running costs are going to be less.
Again, but this is a Nirvana fallacy. If you compare apples to rutabagas, then yeah, if you just compare, the weight of them, provided you cut them both to the same weight, yeah, they'll be comparable weight-wise. But all right, let's move beyond this. We'll wrap things up. But let me just ask you and any of our listeners. This is everybody's homework. So, Dr. Rob here believes that Bitcoin mining is, I guess, one of the best options to be able to drop in some kind of thing into a power grid that has excess energy, use that energy, and create value. The main value you're arguing is obviously an income source by expending that energy. I'm curious what other people might come up with, something that's competitive that could fit the same footprint as a Bitcoin mining rig. That could be used all over the world, that would produce either more income or something more tangible for humanity. Is Bitcoin really our best option? Let's see what people think.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. If people can come up with a good way to mitigate methane at remote landfills, it's very likely they would win some kind of an environmental award.
Okay. Well, I'll put our people on it. We'll see what we can come up with.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. So a lot of fun chatting with you. Maybe we could continue this again at another time and see how things go.
I would love that. Yeah, if maybe it will stimulate a little bit of discussion. And if you've got some other questions or issues you want to point out with my thoughts, then we can have another chat.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing, because I've heard you say this a couple times.
You can say whatever you earlier.
Regarding that if we have too much electricity, that it's a failure in our system.
Yes.
And I think that is incorrect. I think if we have just the right amount of electricity, that's a failure in our system, because that means that we're not prepared for anything extra. So
that's not what I meant, though. What I meant is if we have too much electricity that's wasted, that's inefficiency. I agree. We should always have surplus electricity to be able to meet demand spikes and things like that. But if we have so much where we can afford to keep major electricity wasting things on for extended periods of time, that's poor design. A good electrical grid should be able to meter its electrical power generation up and down. Obviously, some types of stuff like solar, it doesn't make sense. You can't turn a solar panel off. But other stuff like even wind or geothermal or hydroelectric, you can turn some of these turbines off so you're not putting wear and tear on the turbine if you don't need the power. So you could. But you still have to pay. The thing is, you still have to pay bills on those things. So if they're not producing any output, you're losing money on them. So that's the downfall. Yes, the equipment's going to last a little bit longer, but you're going to lose money on it. So the question is whether or not you want something that's profitable, you want a business that's profitable, or you want something that's subsidized. And it comes down to that. But if you think about like building a hydroelectric dam, you don't build a hydroelectric dam with the envision of producing enough electricity for what you have today. You build a hydroelectric dam with the vision of producing enough electricity for what you're going to need in 50 years. Yeah, you produce as much as you can possibly produce.
Electricity.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree, but I think the question is what's the best use of that excess electricity. So we'll put that on other people and see what they have to think. And okay, cool.
Well, I think we disagree on a lot, Adam, but we kept it very cordial. I like this.
Yeah. I appreciate where your heart is at, and if you're really sincere about this, that's great. I'm just not convinced it's the best option because there's just a lot of other collateral damage that I can argue crypto does. But it'll be interesting. Maybe that is one of the things that is unique about crypto and Bitcoin mining is that it has the capacity to be relatively quickly to set up anywhere, consume electricity, and generate revenue. Now, I argue the ability to generate revenue depends on a lot of variables that I think are shaky. So I'm not all that confident. It's not something I necessarily would want to invest in for the long term. But let's see what other people think.
There's for sure risk. I mean, there's no guarantee Bitcoin's going to be here tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So,
all right. Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on, and I thought this was very interesting, and maybe we'll do it again. If you've got some other arguments, anything else you want to bring up, we'll tackle it.
Oh yeah, we just barely touched the surface. I got plenty more to talk about if you want to. So
all right, well, cool.
If you're keen, we can get onto it on a future date.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you. So there you have it, another conversation with a crypto bro, in this case a veterinarian from New Zealand who wanted to talk about Bitcoin and how it can efficiently take advantage of certain issues in the energy grid. Now, I want to point out that both part 1, part 2 of this interview, I don't think that this guy came close to answering the ultimate crypto question, which is name something that blockchain technology is better at than what we've already been using. In his in the first part, he basically said it would help certain unbanked people. He referred to them as people without IDs. But again, very ambiguous, vague reference to some class of people that none of us really can query and find out more specifically whether or not it's really a good solution for them. So again, not specific and very vague. And I think there's plenty of examples, if we cited a specific case of somebody who needed to send money cross-border, that there's other alternatives that are easier. So in the second part, he claims that Bitcoin can just be dropped into various energy situations where they've got excess energy that's not being used, and it can create a revenue source for both the operator as well as the power company. I think there's just a lot of problems with this. First off, I highly doubt that it's the best solution to that problem because operating a Bitcoin mine produces no useful output for anybody except the Bitcoin miner who gets paid in Bitcoin, which creates a whole other problem. And it doesn't produce anything useful. It doesn't store energy in batteries. It doesn't desalinate things. It doesn't help agriculture. He kind of revealed the weakness of this because he said this operation could be scaled up, scaled down, or shut down in whole or part at any time without affecting anything. And that's because it doesn't do anything useful for society. So sure, something that you're running consuming electricity that produces nothing anybody really needs can certainly be shut off at any time without any consequences. So I think he kind of proved my point there that while you can use a bunch of crypto mining equipment to use electricity and possibly generate some revenue, is it practical? Does it make a difference? Does it do anything better? I think that remains to be seen. And last but not least, this is yet another theoretical prototype and not a real world example. There's press releases out there that say there's some Bitcoin miners that are fiddling around in certain areas with, methane capture and gas flaring and this or that. But there's no indication whatsoever that that is being done on a large scale or that it's even practical. So what we've got here is basically somebody citing a theoretical use case and suggesting that it could become a solution. And this is par for the course in the world of crypto. There's lots of press releases of companies suggesting that their blockchain technology can solve a bunch of problems, but they almost never get out there in the real world in a production environment and prove that their implementation is practical. And once again, that's where we're at. A lot of talk about potential. Now, this technology has been around 15 years already, And they're still saying, just wait, sooner or later, we're going to find some blockchain application that makes sense for humanity. We're not there yet. I think we're done waiting. If you couldn't find it the first 15 years, I'm not exactly sure what you're going to find in the next 15 years. But if you disagree, let me know. If you want to come on the show, let me know. We'll debate it and we'll discuss it. Well, there you go. Another episode done. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and supporting our channel and everything. If you'd like to find out more about us, our main website is ioRadio.org. You can also catch us on YouTube at YouTube/American Scream Video. That's where you'll find these podcasts with additional AV added, as well as the documentary Blockchain Innovation or Illusion, which I recommend everybody watch. We're available on all the major podcast streaming platforms, so be sure to look for ioRadio. And until next time, I want to personally thank everybody for tuning in and your support.